Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, and you're listening to MMALatestNews.com.
It's time to roll, baby.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Latest. We're here for the Bellator 245 and 246 preview. Obviously, we've got a doubleheader. MMA is fully back, and we've got a light heavyweight bout between Phil Davis and Lyoto Machida 2. Arian, I'll ask you this first. How impressed have you, or unimpressed have you been by the return of Bellator? Obviously, we've had two events prior to this one. And, you know, they've been some good bouts. Sergio Pettis obviously opened the first one. Nemkov became the light heavyweight title in the last one that we had, what, 3 weeks ago now? And now we've got Phil Davis Machida too. What has been your sort of thoughts on the Bellator return?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting because I think they took a slightly different approach than the UFC. And I don't know if that was because that's what they wanted to do, or maybe that's just what the circumstances allowed them to do. But it seems like they've been kind of quietly going about their business, trying to get back in the swing of things, because obviously I'd imagine the money that they are operating with compared to the UFC, and obviously in terms of the views they get on their streaming platforms and stuff like that, it's just night and day between what Dana White is capable of. So I think they've been trying to get back in the swing of things with those smaller cards, but they've still put on some very good fights, like you just said. I think that Nemkov one was the big one that stole a lot of headlines, and it kind of got their name out there. And maybe to some people that weren't aware that Bellator are back, like now you know that they're back. But I do think that they maybe should have tried to come back straight away with some bigger fights, maybe to get that train going again. But I mean, they're doing, I don't know, a similar kind of thing that like the UFC are in terms of the testing and empty arenas, and they're starting to get back in the swing of things and putting on regular events. So that's good to see that MMA is starting to come back in more places than just the Octagon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would agree. Sorry, Mitch. Yeah, just to touch on what Arnie was saying, I would agree to an extent. But like, you have to remember, Bellator was kind of buzzing for a week or so, maybe 3 weeks ago, after Nemkov beat Ryan Bader, which obviously stemmed the whole light heavyweight division, the better divisions in Bellator now, and created some debate online. So it was like Bellator was kind of booming on the social media front. And now it's time for cards to produce. They do have 2 short cards, which could probably, I don't know if it's a hindrance or a bonus, but I guess they're just trying to find their feet as well. You know, like Arian said, they're not trying to follow the UFC's protocol about returning to, you know, action, but I guess they're just trying to find their feet, and we'll see how they get on within another month or so.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it has almost how boxing returned with Fight Camp, where there was only the British Board of Boxing Control only allowed them to have 5 fights on one event. And obviously they're bringing it back in slowly, whereas the UFC, obviously we know they've got the Apex, they've got their own facilities where they can put on events, you know, twice a week at the moment. But I'll ask you this, Phil Davis, Lyoto Machida, obviously renowned with their UFC careers, and, you know, they come towards the end perhaps. Jay, what do you think about this rematch? Obviously Phil Davis won the first one. Is Machida almost coming to that point now where he's going on a little too longer? He beat Chael Sonnen, of course, quite convincingly, but, you know, he doesn't want to tarnish that legacy too much, does he?
Not really, like, but it's also, I find it interesting that Bellator are labeling this as the rematch. Like, if you remember when, I can't think off the top of my head, but there's been fights that have happened in previous promotions, and then when a rematch took place in the UFC, they never label it as a rematch. They always kind of focused it on their brand, and it's their show, and they don't kind of give any, like, acknowledgement to what happened previously. So if newcomers are coming in and watching this fight, you know, you think, right, well, it happened once. Where did it happen? Oh, it happened to the UFC. Let's go over here and have a look. Like, I don't think that was the smartest idea. But in terms of the fight, I don't really know what it does for both, to be perfectly honest. Both have had runs, championship runs, Machida in the UFC, Phil Davis, obviously, in Bellator. But I don't really know, what it does for either. You know, the title just changed hands recently. I suppose it can only help to boost someone into in contention for a title shot. So let's just see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Arian, obviously we know Davis has 3 wins in the last tour, and that loss was to the now champ Nemkov. Machida's lost his last fight against Musasi, but, you know, an impressive win for one of these could put themselves into a title shot perhaps.
Yeah, I think I was at that Musasi Machida fight in Los Angeles, covering it for us, and I think I wasn't too impressed by either of them, but I think it was one of those fights where obviously the winner was going to set themselves up nicely, like Machida has, even though it's at a lower weight class, Musashi has at a lower weight class, and now Machida is here. But he didn't look great, you know. I think ever since his glory days in the UFC, I don't think he has been the same. And it's like Jay said, it's very difficult to see where this fight kind of puts him if he goes on to win against the Phil Davis. I do think this fight might be catered a little more to Davis, as he has been on a winning streak himself, and that might maybe a win over a Machida, since his last loss is to the current champion, might kind of elevate his status in that division a little bit. And also touching on what Jay said, I do see the point that he made about Bellator running with the rematch and him not really liking it. But I think it's tough, especially when you have two fighters like this, to make a main event and, you know, to sell it that it's not a title fight and it's a fight between two guys that aren't really in title contention. Yeah. So I think Bellator had to run with that rematch to kind of justify why they are putting this as the main event, to carry this show on a card that, let's be honest, isn't stacked with superstars.
I just find that there's no logic behind the rematch anyway. You know, so it's a case of just putting two people together, keep them busy, and kind of have a headline fight out there while we're in these crazy times, I guess. That's the only thing. But none of it really made sense to me. Like, I do see your counter to that, like, about the rematch. Like, you're not wrong. Like, opinions aren't wrong. But, like, I just find that, I don't know, it probably wouldn't have been something I would have done. But, you know, who am I?
Do you think... I understand that. Yeah, I was going to say, do you think the fact that it is only their, third event back, do you think it's more of the fact getting eyes on the sport? Everyone knows Machida is a big name outside of, you know, the hardcore MMA world. And even then, there's probably a nostalgic feeling seeing them compete again. And obviously, we're in the streaming world now where, you know, their primary concern is getting the zone streams and getting, you know, the zone sign-ups, of course. Do you think just because it's a nostalgic feeling in the bout that's, you know, the first one of two, do you think there's a more of the business sense into making the fight rather than a sporting almost sense?
Yeah, well, like you said, like I said earlier, like they are kind of finding their feet again. You know, they're jumping back into it. Like, who knows? Like, outside of the UFC have seemed to kind of hit the nail on the head with returning to action since the lockdown. But, you know, this is essentially new for Bellator. How many fights have the UFC had since they came back? Like 20 cards, maybe? Yeah. I would say roughly 20 cards, you know, like Bellator are only getting their feet wet again. So they'll figure it out. And it makes sense to put, you know, a household name on the bill. Like Lyoto Machida is a legend. He's a big following from Brazil. Again, like you said about the zone and numbers and stuff, like all these things make sense. So, and like Arian touched on earlier, like Machida, you know, before he lost his UFC title, like there was nobody bigger. Like I remember when he beat Rashad Evans, like everything was crazy. Like no one saw a way of beating this fella because he was so new. Like his style was so new. I don't know. But since then, you know, he's been pretty inconsistent. So, you know, let's just see like if he can maintain that following and carry it over this weekend.
I think this has been kind of Bellator's model in a way for quite some time, the way they like to hop on a legendary name and get them to headline a non-title fight main event and see what it can do, especially with those double headers. You know, I guess that's kind of understandable that it's tough, especially in these conditions, to get two title fights back-to-back on back-to-back days to headline two events. So I guess it kind of makes sense. And like you said, from that business standpoint, they're definitely hoping that putting on a Machida fight will get them some viewers. But also then contradicting to what I just said earlier, I don't think selling that as a Machida-Davis rematch gets them any more DAZN buys. I think if anybody's going to tune into that, they're going to do it regardless, whether it's a second fight or their first fight.
Definitely. And, you know, as you mentioned there, when he came in, you all know the Joe Rogan, you know, the welcome to the Machida era. You know, we're coming towards the end of that, but, you know, he was that, you know, he wasn't as big as Conor McGregor, but it was that one day coming in and goes, okay, this one's changing the game at the moment.
Yeah, well, like, exactly, that was what I mean. Like, when he knocked out Rashad and the whole Machida era thing, you know, that was huge. Who did he beat before Rashad? Was it Pete Ortiz he beat before Rashad? I might be wrong. But either way, I just remember watching him, like, being so consistent and so, like nobody could figure him out. And then all of a sudden, Shogun kicked the legs off him the next fight, got robbed, and then knocked him out in the rematch. And then since then, we kind of, you know, we've got this inconsistency from him. So, yeah, like in terms of what we get from him, I don't know. Like I really can't tell. And the rematch is not the most eye-catching fight, I don't think. You know, I think they could have went in another avenue, but I guess they could only go with what's available, I suppose. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think to me, if I could just add to that on Machida, I feel like when I watch some of his fights, and especially that last one, he's kind of reminded me of Anderson Silva, the modern day Anderson Silva, who it feels like he still has something left in the tank and that he has something still to give there. And like ability wise, you obviously don't lose it. And I think Machida looks good at 205. He looks light on his feet, and I think he does have power. But he just looked to me like maybe he's a little bit afraid to pull the trigger for whatever reason that may be, whether that is the fear of getting knocked out or whatever, because he's obviously had a long career. So I do think that there's still something left in it, but I like we've been saying since we started, I don't really know where he is kind of headed right now.
Yeah, definitely. Before his loss to Misasi, he was on a 4-fight win streak, which is quite impressive, especially, his last fight in the UFC, Lyoto Belfort, that kick to the face that, cleaned out Belfort. And I think he retired off the back of that as well. Obviously, Rafael Carvalho after that, for his Bellator debut. Then Chael Sonnen. We know how much of the legend Chael Sonnen is. It just come off the back of that heavyweight Grand Prix. And
some would say he's undefeated and undisputed.
I think he says that too. Never lost a round, Chael P. Sonnen. But, he is 42 years of age, and, Father Time catches up with you sooner rather than later.
I think in this fight's defense, though, since Nemkov just beat Bader, other than Corey Anderson, that division just got blown wide open. So I think a very impressive win by either Machida or Davis kind of puts their name in there saying, like, I could be next. If you need somebody to step in, call me.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't feel like we'll get that necessarily, because you've just said, like, Machida has been so hesitant on pulling the trigger in his last couple of fights, and then you have Phil Davis, like, I don't necessarily see it being, one way for either person to where it has to put them in contention, I think if you get the Machida of old where he just turns back the clock and lights up Phil Davis, then yeah, potentially. But I don't know if we're going to see that.
Okay, let's get your predictions then. Arian, do you think who comes out, Machida or Davis? Does he make it 2-0?
I mean, recency bias, Davis has obviously looked better and he has those wins behind him going into this one. But I do think that if it maybe goes long, Machida is obviously the better fighter for me all day and night when it comes to just the skill set and obviously experience and everything really. So he didn't look terrible against Musasi, but like I said, I feel like he was just afraid to just go that extra mile to get the win. And I think Musasi just outgrinded him in that fight. But I do think that he might pick up the win here. But I guess it just depends in what fashion. So I'm not going to go as far as I do in those UFC ones where I give you the method, but I do think that Machida will get his hand raised in this one.
And setting up the trilogy, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah. That's the money fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, Jay.
I think Phil Davis gets it done. I think he beats him by decision. I think he just out-grapples him. I think he holds him against the fence. I think he gets him down, stays on him, does enough just to stay active. And I think, Machida will probably have his moments in there, but I just don't think he'll have enough. I think Phil Davis will use his size to make sure he comes out the winner.
Definitely. I think that's a good prediction there. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win. Is it Machida or Davis, of course? And now we move on to the co-main event where, of course, Kat Zingano is making her Bellator debut. She's been out for a little while. She's had 4 losses in her last 5. A last fight in the UFC was against Megan Anderson, where she got an eye injury after being kicked in the eye by Megan Anderson. But she comes up against Gabby Holloway. Arian, what are you making of this fight? Is it just one to ease Zingano in, perhaps?
Yeah, I think we were kind of discussing it before we started recording that this might be a little bit of a layup for her to just kind of get her feet wet in Bellator and get that win on the board, especially because she has been losing quite a bit recently before this switch. In her defense, playing devil's advocate a little bit, she has been losing to some very big names, obviously, other than maybe Megan Anderson. With all due respect, she's just, not on that level than some of the other losses. But like also Jay said before we started, one of her most recent losses is to Ronda Rousey too. So it's kind of, it begs the question of why maybe she was so inactive or what went wrong. But obviously a step over to Bellator where the women's divisions aren't as stacked as those in the UFC might be a good move. And obviously I don't think we're going to learn too much in this fight against her opponent in this one, because her record, I believe, is 6-5, I think. So it might be one of those where you just want her to get a good start and and throw herself in there, like just to announce her arrival.
Yeah, 100%.
I just need to check something. Sorry, I just wanted to check something. Didn't Zingano's husband passed away a couple of years ago as well? So like this is also like factors that you have to take into place as well as to what leads to inconsistency, or you know, whether it's just the motive or the drive is there to continue at a high level. I don't know. Now, obviously, she still competes, so surely she has aspirations and goals. But you know, you have to remember these fighters are human beings as well, and she's had a traumatic experience. You know, obviously a life-changing experience. So, you know, you have to remember certain things play parts in it. Like, and she's had 5 fights in 5 years. You know, 3 in 2018. So there's a good stretch of inactivity then for 2 of those years. So with that comes inconsistency also. Now, like Arden said, I do feel like it's potentially a fight that's set up for her to get back to winning ways, get some confidence in herself. And Bellator are good for that. Like, Bellator are great for that, I'll be honest. They know how to kind of slow build, or to, you know, just, if it's just a case of a pick-me-up, it's not so much a gimme fight. I don't want to be disrespectful to her opponent, but the reality is that's how they tend to go. You know, these matchups tend to do that, especially with prospects, you know, that fed people from, like, either losing records or very close records. So it should be a comfortable one for her, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely is. You know, their records aren't too dissimilar: 10-4, 6-5. So on the experience level, you know, they've had very similar number of fights. But you know, Kat Zingano's fights have been, you know, her experience in those fights have been a lot more. She got wins over Nunes, Tate, Raquel Pennington, and obviously she's been in there with Ronda Rousey, albeit only for 14 seconds. Preparing for someone like Ronda Rousey, you know, the experience that you gain from that is only going to benefit her more than someone like her opponent Holloway, who's not had those wars to go through.
I would have loved to have seen her against Rousey if she got past that 14 seconds. Because knowing what we eventually learned to find out about Ronda Rousey, and at that time, Kat Zingano was tough. She was gritty. Like, I thought Nunes was ahead in the fight, but she stuck through and put her out there in the 3rd round. So I would like to see how she would have fared. And then ever since then, that's where, like, that was the beginning of the, you know, the losing streak. I think it was 4 fights. Was it? Was a 3-fight losing streak, 1-1,
Yeah.
then lost to Megan Anderson. Yeah, so I would have liked to have seen it. Like Arian said it earlier about Machida, like, the ability's always still there. Yeah. You know, it's whether she has that heart and that toughness to still go through it, and I'd like to think she does.
I was just about to touch on that. Looking at her record and who she went through before that loss to Rousey, like, it's easy to forget that she was one of the pioneers of the UFC women's fighting, and she was a championship caliber fighter.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously, like Jay said, the circumstances, obviously, they definitely play into it, because, like Jay said, she is only a human. So I think maybe that switch over to Bellator after just an unfortunate run in the UFC is just a sign of a new start, you know, a change of scenery, a different division, and she could become a player in that bantamweight division in Bellator.
Absolutely. 100%.
Definitely. You know, not many people can say they've got a win over Amanda Nunes, you know, who's now, after that fight, become the unanimous greatest of all time in terms of women's MMA. And, you know, some are putting up there on that Mount Rushmore soon with all of the MMA, perhaps, you know. So, you know, it's an incredible feat to have a Nunes win on your record.
Absolutely. It's like you said, not many people get to have that. And no one looks close to Amanda Nunes right now. Like, she is the greatest of all time in the women's category. She's definitely pound for pound in all of MMA. And Kat Zingano has a win over her, you know. So, Miesha Tate as well, am I correct?
Yep. Yeah, she beat Miesha Tate and then Nunes straight away. That's
back-to-back 2 UFC champions. So, you know, she's a lot to hold her head high for. It's just about kind of getting back to that. And let's see if she can. I'd like to think she can.
Okay.
I mean, also, sorry, just to add on to that, before Nunes won the title, she didn't look, or I don't think many people would have predicted her to become what she has become, you know. So you just never really know when the corner is getting turned for you and when you're getting that big break. So, albeit it's going to be in Bellator, she still has a future ahead of her if you know, her head is all in there, her heart is all in there.
Yeah, 100%. You know, Nunes, you know, going into that Miesha Tate fight, she well, I think everyone would think the Nunes now would probably batter the Nunes that won the title of Miesha Tate, perhaps.
But wouldn't even get out of 1st round.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, you see the journey of the fighter, and even still, she's still only just coming to prime. She's still got a couple of years, 3-4 years potentially at the top if she's fighting twice a year. But back to Cat Zingano, Jay, you're predicting Cat Zingano to win. Are you going to predict the method of how she wins?
No. No, because I can't. Like, I don't know. Like, Cat Zingano can't do it all. She can, like, edge out a decision. She can be dominant. She can finish it. Like, obviously not going off her previous 5 fights. Who's to know, really? So this is just it's a confidence boosting fight, I think, for her. So we'll see how she does, but I do think she will win.
And yourself, Arian, you know, are you predicting Cat Zingano to win? Minus 700 favourite. It's not looking good for poor Gabby Holloway, is it?
Yeah, no, like we said, I think that the moral of this fight is that this is a fight given to Carmouche in order to, or not Carmouche, jeez, that's next. Cat Zingano in order to come over here and get her debut in and get that win under her belt, and like I said, announce herself on the scene. So I do think it's going to be a comfortable win. But what I've learned from watching Bellator a little bit more is that those fighters with those records that maybe aren't as, I don't know, dominant, if you want to say it, if you want to call a 6-5 record, that are just very tough. Sometimes they're very hard to put away. So maybe she's just not going to go in there and roll through her, but she might have to edge out a decision. So, but either way, I do think it's going to be a comfortable performance. And
yeah, definitely. She does have only one, I guess one notable name is that she lost to Julia Budd in her career. So I guess she's someone who's on the edge of that, on the cusp of, these greats on the come up. But yeah, it's probably going to be it could be a very tough fight for Cat Zingano, depending on how she comes in mentally. But as you mentioned there, Liz Carmouche will move on to 246. Bantamweight world title on the line. Juan Archuleta versus Patchy Mix. Arian, we know how good these Grand Prix are. How excited were you to see a title fight? It's only the second one we've had since Bellator's come back. Yeah,
very, very exciting. It's a really good matchup between Archuleta, who was pretty much undefeated because he was on that crazy, I think, 18-fight win streak before he lost to Pitbull, against Patchy Mix, who is obviously undefeated. So I think it's a fight between two young and very high-level fighters, and I think that's like kind of the cream of the crop of what Bellator can put on in terms of title fights that are just very, very reputable. They're not some names that are pulled from different companies or old legends. Those are two guys that are in their prime and fighting for their promotion under their banner. So I'm very excited about that one. And also intrigued because I don't think Archuleta has looked great since that Pitbull fight. He just didn't look himself. He was afraid, I think, as well, to pull the trigger a little bit, maybe a little bit too respectful for the long reigning featherweight champion. But now he's back down to 135. And he's fighting against a guy I think that Bellator have a lot of high hopes for. He's been promoted quite heavily, obviously undefeated, which every promotion kind of likes to build around those kind of fighters. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely, Jay. We've got obviously with Gallagher in the bantamweight division as well. This title fight could have big implications on James Gallagher's career potentially in the near future.
Well, I would imagine James Gallagher is probably the next in line. Like, they've really put the machine behind Gallagher, if you want to say. And, okay, you can give all the hype you want. You can give them all the promotion. You can put the back in. But at the end of the day, fighters have to go out there and show up. And Gallagher's been doing that. He's been cutting through people. Obviously, well, even more so since he got beat by Ricky Banderas. But again, he's another one who's kind of, he's still hanging around that area. I'm pretty sure he'd like a Gallagher rematch as well at some point. So there's a couple of names in there. Sergio Pettis, he dropped to 135, did he?
Yep. He just coming in.
You have to imagine he's in the conversation as well. Like, if it's not Gallagher next, it's probably going to be Sergio Pettis because of, who his brother is. Also, what he's done in the UFC as well. He went on a run in the UFC. So
he's excellent at Bellator too since he came over.
Yeah, it's like you said about Cat Zingano. It's a new start. It's like you don't forget about what happened in the UFC, but it's like fresh start, clean slate. Let's go do something now. And Bellator's a good level to do that. And to be a world champion there, just because you're a world champion in Bellator doesn't mean you're not as good as any champion in the UFC. Like, we've seen fighters cross over and straight away become champions. It happens. So I think it's a good time for the 135-pound division in Bellator right now. But I would honestly say James Gallagher will be next. I think there's more of a push to make Gallagher a number one contender than there is Sergio Pettis. Although Pettis, like, don't know if you can say he's more deserving because he's only come in, but what he's done in his career. But Gallagher's they've wanted that from Gallagher from day one, especially over here in Europe. You go to an Irish show. Like, I remember Gallagher fought. Right, I went to see it, and it was actually he fought Anthony Taylor, and the main event was King Mo. I couldn't tell you who King Mo fought. The arena was empty by the time King Mo made his entrance. Nobody cared. Like, everyone left. But Gallagher, as soon as he shut up shop, it was like McGregor when he beat Brandao in the Tree Arena for the UFC. It was crazy. And that's what they want. They kind of want, not, I hate going off the Conor McGregor thing, but it's like they want to build what the UFC had in Conor. You know, like a proper star all over the world. And we'll see if Gallagher's capable of living up to that.
That might be the name of his whiskey, proper star. But anyway, if he makes one. But I was going to say...
Oh, God. I love it.
But, you know, as you mentioned, Ricky Bandejas, both of these two fighters for the title have got a win over Ricky Bandejas. You know, Sergio Pettis, you mentioned there, it might be nice for him, you know, moving over to Bellator. He's out of the shadow with his brother almost, Arian.
Yeah, but I think in recent years, though, he has been doing better than Anthony. And he was a title challenger in a very good bantamweight division, or was it flyweight? I think it was flyweight, wasn't it, in the UFC?
He might have crossed over between both of them.
So, but he was a very dangerous and a very respected fighter in there, always in and around that top 5. And now he's came over here, and I think as much as we say that, you know, Bellator maybe isn't as much worse than the UFC in terms of overall level as maybe it is portrayed sometimes, I do think that the level of fighter that he was in the UFC, he comes over with an advantage and with that reputation, you know, already at that level. He has no building to do now. So, and he's come over and he's looked fantastic in Bellator. And I think he's kind of shown that he is on a very high level right now. So it's going to be interesting to see which avenue Bellator opts to go, because obviously he's going to be close. Gallagher's going to be close. And this fight is going to open all of those avenues for them, this fight between Archuleta and Mix.
Not to, like, kind of completely forget about or brush past the two guys fighting in the main event this weekend, but could you imagine a title fight with Pettis and Gallagher? Like, the build for that, because you have, you know, Anthony Pettis, his little brother, right? But like you said, I remember when Pettis was coming up and all of a sudden he was talking about his younger brother who hadn't even made his pro debut yet. Now Sergio's come into this little phenom, let's just say, you could call it. But yeah, he, like Arnie just said, he's kind of overshadowed Anthony now in terms of his career and the consistent level. I think it'd be very fascinating if you had him and Gallagher for a title. I think that would do pretty big things for Bellator. That could be a fight that could potentially get them, you know, to another level. Yeah,
definitely. I was just thinking there, maybe on a business sense, especially with Gallagher being in Ireland, you know, with how things are at the moment, travel restrictions, etc. Sergio Pettis might just get the next shot just because of the fact that he's in America. But also Gallagher, you know, he is their, you know, one of their top 3 sort of superstars in a way. You'd probably imagine they want to give them a title shot in Ireland in front of 9,000 people in the free arena. So he might just have to wait, you know, 6 or 7 months before we can start getting fans back in arenas, before he starts getting a title shot. Plus, I think it's on the cusp that we're getting, you know, 4 shows in Milan coming in October for Bellator Europe fighters. So there's going to be something there for him come October, November. But I get your prediction there.
I was waiting on Arian to jump in.
I thought you were going to take it away because you were on the Gallagher topic. I thought you were going to take it.
Hey, we'll jump on the predictions. Arian, who comes out with the bantamweight title wrapped around them?
Yeah, so it's a difficult one for me because I just haven't seen enough of Patchy Mix, you know, when it comes to fighting against those high level. Like, he doesn't have really any marquee names on his record other than Bandejas, who quite a lot of people do have him as that common win on their record, let's be honest. So I'm intrigued by it, like I said, and also because I just haven't been that impressed with Archuleta in his last 2 fights at least. But I do think, though, that Archuleta is the better fighter, and I think this is going to be the biggest test of Patchy Mix's career for sure when it comes to professional MMA. And I don't know. I think maybe 145 was just a little bit too much for Archuleta. Maybe I think 135 is that perfect way for him to utilize that power, pull the trigger, and just use his all-around game, which is excellent. So I do think that he will come out of this one with his hand raised, but by what method, I'm not sure.
No worries. Jay, obviously, Patchy's got 13-0. We've got Juan Archuleta. Obviously, he's on 26 fights now, so he's got double the experience Patchy has, of course. Do you think we could be seeing someone lose their own on Friday night or Saturday night even, this one?
Well, look, I think it can be a case of experience over momentum. But then again, it could go the other way. You know, like Arian said, Archuleta hasn't really been, you know, hasn't looked on it recently. So I'll probably favour with momentum and go Patchy mix. I'd probably say he comes out with his hand raised and a nice belt this weekend.
Yeah, to kind of put a double-edged sword on my prediction, that's how stars are made, right? He's 13-0. He's undefeated. He's getting his biggest fight of his career in a title fight. This is his moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets his hand raised either.
That's solely the reason why I'm going with it, because although like the experience lies not with him, put it that way, so I just think momentum will get him through it. You know, like some people just have to rise to the occasion, and when it's your time, make sure you grab it with both hands, and I reckon that happens this weekend.
Definitely. Moving on to the welterweight co-main event, John Fitch, Neiman Gracie. Arian, this is going to be this could be a fun one for the lovers of jiu-jitsu here, potentially. We know what Neiman Gracie, the name he brings in and what the skills he's shown in the Bellator cage before. How are you looking forward to this one?
Yeah, it's another one of those where in terms of MMA experience, it's night and day in terms of John Fitch's advantage. But Gracie has looked very promising. His only loss is to Rory McDonald, which is nothing to be ashamed of, you know, especially with his record only being 9-1. So he is still very green. And as we know, those fighters that are jiu-jitsu based sometimes struggle to start off, you know, with striking and stuff like that, because that's just not it's just not second nature to them as grappling is. So, but it is going to be an interesting fight, and I'm looking forward, because obviously with the name Gracie just comes a ton of pressure on your back. Always, no matter what sport you're in, like we've seen with Kron Gracie over in the UFC. So I think it's going to be an interesting one, and it's going to be nice to see where John Fitch is at also in his career, because obviously with the bags of experience that he does have on his opponent, it's going to be interesting to see how he fares against a very high level opponent in that aspect.
Definitely. Both of them in their last fight, they was obviously part of that welterweight Grand Prix with Rory McDonald. They both lost to McDonald in successive fights. Both went the distance, actually, which, you know, with Neiman Gracie, you know, he was only 9-0 when he stepped into the cage to face Rory McDonald. Go 5 rounds with Rory McDonald is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. And it's also, like Arian said, like you can't be really disheartened by getting beat by Rory McDonald. You know, he's fought for multiple world titles, and he's been a world champion in Bellator. So I wouldn't even be down on myself about that. It's just a case of building yourself back up and pushing on. It's kind of like what I said in the last one, and Arian touched on it just there. It's like experience and momentum again, because I would imagine Gracie has momentum still coming with him. Like, okay, right, you lost to Rory McDonald, but it's not the end of the world. You can pick yourself back up and just continue where you left off. Like, it is that case. And again, with like jiu-jitsu practitioners basically striking, we've seen it a couple of times now. They're not the most flattering on the feet, whereas John Fitch has put a lot of time in. So we'll see how that goes. And John Fitch can then dictate where he wants that fight to take place. But then again, if that goes to the ground, that's a chess match. You know, and that's a chess match. It's like, right, you make the first wrong move, you're going to be punished. So it's definitely interesting, and I look forward to seeing it play out.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was just looking at their ages there. There's a 10-year age gap in, you know, probably I'd say in favour and John Fitch is the older fighter coming into this. But, you know, we mentioned before, once you're hitting those early 40s, you know, time, you know, it doesn't matter how good you are, time ends up catching up with you. And for Gracie, you know, coming at 32, he's coming into his prime, albeit Fitch, as you said, you know, he's got, you know, 5 or 6 times as many fights as Gracie has. Well, actually, about 4, actually.
Yeah, but it's also like you said, you know, sometimes when you get on an edge, your body just doesn't let you do things that you want. Like, you can see things play out, you can see shots coming, and you know to get out of the way, but your body just doesn't react. You know, I don't think John Fitch is at that level yet, but, you know, he is getting on, and he has been like, he's been on the wrong side of some, you know, some bad results in the past. So let's just say I think this will just be a fun one. I think this one was more for the crowd. I think this is a very, especially jiu-jitsu fans. You know, this is a fight for them, and I think they'll get their money's worth.
Definitely. Arian, let's get a prediction. Is it going to be a Gracie win?
Looking at it, it's Gracie, like Jay was talking about the momentum. It's different when you're 9-0 and you get knocked out or submitted, or than when you lose to a Rory McDonald caliber of fighter by decision. So I do think that it's as much as it is interesting to see how he bounces back from losing his O. I do think that there is that bit of encouragement that I think he left that fight in, like kind of showing him that he belongs in there, that he can hang with somebody like Rory McDonald. So I do like his chances in there, and I do think that he will get back into winning ways and get his hand raised and kind of maybe just signify that it is the young era. You know, he's a bit younger and he's on the come up, like you said, in his athletic prime. So I do think that he will get John Fitch out of there. And I'm going to go out here on the limb and say he's going to be by submission.
Sure.
Which limb? No. I say, you know, I was just thinking there, obviously Rory McDonald, I think it was before the Gracie fight, wasn't it, where he made that post-fight speech saying how he doesn't really feel like he wants to be hurting people anymore. And, you know, hearing that, especially when he was in the cage with Rory McDonald, it must throw you off the game, hearing someone you're going to be competing with in 2 months say, I don't really want to hurt you.
Yeah, I suppose it's a weird one. Like, it probably messes with you mentally. You know, it could be like one of those, was it Chris Eubanks and Hugh, where he got hypnotized and it threw him off. Oh, it's a nervous fire that's completely gone in my head. Anyway, but yeah, like, it could have been one of those little throw off things, but listen, at the end of the day, he still got in there and he competed. Rory McDonald had to do a job, and it just so happened that, you know, he saw the game plan out and he got the win. Now, for Gracie, it's like Arian said, he was still able to hang with him, you know, and that's enough confidence to kind of push forward and say, right, if Rory McDonald is here, and right, okay, I didn't get my arm raised, but I could maintain a certain level of performance. Now it's about excelling and seeing where we go, right? So I would imagine he's put the time in to sharpen up his tools, and now, like Arian said, I do expect him to beat John Fitch, and I do think he'll submit him as well. I can't give you the round because I just don't know, but I do expect him to do it.
Definitely. I think we could see a good win there from Gracie, and it'd be nice to see him getting back to winning ways and see how he reacts from taking his first professional loss. But we move on. Liz Carmouche making her Bellator debut, of course. The big fight that everyone's talking about. We've got 2 debuts this weekend. Obviously, we've talked about Zingano, but Liz Carmouche coming in at flyweight. How are you expecting to do? 13-7, she's up against Deanna Bennett, Arian. Is this another one of those thriller ones? I feel like this one's going to be more closer than the Zingano fight, with all due respect.
Yeah, definitely on paper, you know, their records aren't a world apart in this one. And in terms of experience, they're very similar too. And as I'm looking here, Carmouche's last loss is to Valentina, which is also similar to Gracie. Nothing to be ashamed of. And other than that, she had 2 victories in the UFC before that, including one over Jennifer Maia. So I think she's another one of those names that's coming over into Bellator. And I don't know if she's in as much need of a fresh start as Zingano, because obviously you lose to Shevchenko, okay, you bounce back and you can go again. You still belong in that division somewhere. But she's obviously opted to make the move, and I think she has potential, and maybe even more so than Zingano, to come over here and be maybe one of their stars, you know, become a name. And although obviously her record isn't as dominant maybe as you would like for one of your stars, but her opponent is somewhere close there. So I think this might be somewhere along the lines of a fight that could determine one of the contenders in the near future, you know, because obviously their records are, like I said, quite similar. So this is a good fight. I don't think this is as much of a layup for Carmouche as it might be for Zingano's case the night before. Yeah,
definitely. I'm just looking at Deanna Bennett's here. Obviously, she's come up through Invicta, of course, but she's got a win over Jennifer Maia as well. She also got a win over Juliana Pena when she was in her second fight, so she came 2-0 with that. She's lost to Roxanne Modafferi, Lavina Souza, who recently impressed on the UFC card a couple of weeks ago. But again, she's got a fantastic record in terms of the resume and body of work. And, you know, added a win against Liz Carmouche would only, you know, improve that furthermore, Jay.
Yeah, it would. And I think depending on what level of performance you get from Carmouche will kind of say as to like if she beat Carmouche and then she also has a Roxanne Modafferi on her record as well, it's kind of like Are they just around the same level? Or is it going to be you have a win over the woman who fought for the first ever UFC women's title? You know what I mean? It depends on what Carmouche you're going to get. And again, I feel like I'm just like, you're letting Arian go first and I'm just agreeing with him. But I do think it's the case of like, it's not the Kat Zingano scenario where, right, we come in and we'll build you back up and this and that. You know, she lost to a world champion in her last fight. So like, look, it is what it is. Let's see if she can still maintain the level of performance that got her to the world title previously. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good merit, definitely on the Invicta circuit. You know, I've just seen that. Obviously, Liz Commissioner come up from Invicta, and they're producing well. So we've got Megan Anderson fighting for the featherweight title coming towards the end of the year against Amanda Nunes. With a Felicia Spencer fight for the title this year. So it only puts good merits on Invicta, doesn't it, Arian?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love the concept of Invicta, that it's just built around the women's side of the game, because obviously we know how Dana White was before Ronda Rousey. Obviously, he was saying that women, I don't know if he was meaning that they don't belong in the sport, but they just don't belong under the UFC banner, and he was very reluctant. But now you see that some of the best fighters maybe in history, like Amanda Nunes, she's a woman, you know, and the body of work that she was able to put in. So I do love what Invicta are doing, and they're just pumping out the talent consistently. You know, whenever you see somebody that's up and coming with a good record either in the UFC or Bellator, they're coming in and you see Invicta on their resume. That's where they came through and built their name. So it's a great opportunity, and I think it's also motivating for some of the younger fighters that do maybe idolize the likes of Rousey's and the Amanda Nunes is now today, or the Valentinas, that there is a route for them to go. And if you are good enough in a company like Invicta, you will get pulled out into one of the, you know, huge organizations that do both men's and women's fighting.
Yeah, they're like Ajax.
That's very, very true for all you football or soccer fans. You know what Jay's on about.
Yes, definitely. Do you think, I don't want to call this an upset, but you're almost heading towards the upset, Arian, with Deanna Bennett getting the win?
I don't think that would be my prediction, no, but I do think that it's a great opportunity for her, though, to get that kind of a name on a very good card, too, that, you know, you would expect people to be watching from the start, that pay-per-view. So I think people will be watching. So there is that incentive as well, that you're not only fighting somebody who's come from a very good background in the UFC and has fought some of the best in the world, but you're also on a card that people will be tuning in for because of some of the other high-profile fights around you. So I do think that's a fantastic opportunity for her to go to 11-7 and kind of maybe again turn a corner, like we've been saying. But I don't know. I think obviously, like Jay said, I do agree with it. Depends what Carmouche does sew up and what kind of her motivation is going into this one, into her debut as well. So it's a big fight for her too, and with somebody who I think has just that bit more high-level experience. So I'm going to side with the high-level experience for this one. I think Carmouche will get her hand raised.
And yourself, Jay?
Yeah, I just don't know enough about Bennett, like, not being disrespectful. I genuinely just don't. And again, you can only go off Liz Carmouche's record and, okay, where she got to previously, fighting for a UFC world title again. So I would imagine she's still around that level to, you know, get her hand raised this weekend. Like, I think we'll get just enough from her to see her move up the ranks in Bellator and get some bigger fights.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to have a quick look at the odds here, but I can't find them at the moment. But I'm sure this one's pretty close. But I was just going to say, you know, this is a good promotion for the zone as well. Obviously, you know, it broke out Wednesday. We're recording this, that Canelo Alvarez is going to be trying to sue the promotion as well as Golden Boy. So there's going to be some potential hiccups coming along the way for the zone, and obviously they're almost the primary sort of broadcaster for Bellator at the moment, especially got obviously Paramount in the US and obviously Sky Sports in the UK. But this might be, you know, this is going to be a positive outlook for them this week.
That might mean that Bellator are about to throw a 5-title fight main card on soon on pay-per-view for the zone.
Yeah, they might have some crossover bouts coming up. But
no. Not with the UFC.
Yeah.
Maybe ring up Logan Paul.
That's not Bellator's fault.
No, I think it's time to ring up Logan Paul and get him inside the Bellator cage, perhaps. Get him up against Dylan Dennis or something. Get them in
all
pay-per-view.
Go to the Paul brothers.
But,
They
I
have a
think
good reputation with the zone as well, don't they? So I'd personally get Jake Paul, and I would put him in there with Czech Congo. No, it could be anybody. just give me something. I just want to see one of them get hurt.
Put Logan in there against Fedor, double header.
I think that'd be a fair fight.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, if Bellator do want Brock, there's the fight to make. Brock and Logan. Do it. Book it now.
See that? I don't want to see Fedor die.
Yeah, especially with the history that Brock has. Hopefully, he'd be able to keep that one clean. But I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Almost. Where obviously your Twitter handles will be down below. Make sure to give the guys a follow as well. They're fantastic. They're covering each event as we go by week to week, and it's getting up to the busy period now. UFC 253. It's just around the corner, so we'll be doing the live pre-show for the Adesanya versus Costa. But this,
Catch me on that.
Yeah, poor Mitch's heart's going to be broke. Can you imagine him when Adesanya walks to the cage? Come on, Paulo Costa.
I've been scared for the past, 2 months since it's been announced. But make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're closing in on 10K now. Make sure to drop this video a like, and we see you guys tomorrow evening for the Saturday UFC Vegas 10 live pre-show.